tonight's topic is suicide, and this topic is near and dear to my heart as well for a variety of reasons. First being, before I got saved, I was, as I shared with you in a previous webinar, into drugs and alcohol, and towards the end was very suicidal. But also in my own life, I've had a neighbor who committed suicide. I've had someone in high school commit suicide, and I even, when I was in alcohol rehab, walked in on someone who was trying to commit suicide. And so this is a very real issue. In fact, I wouldn't be too surprised if each and every one of you has knows someone directly or indirectly who has attempted or has committed suicide. And some of us may even, like myself, have had suicide thoughts over their lifetime. And so this is a real relevant issue, and tonight we were going to learn how to study this doctrine. There's a lot to be gleaned from the scriptures, from resources that can help us not understand the root causes of it, but also how to face it and confront it and overcome it. And that's really what I want to make sure we leave tonight. Tonight's topics are 7 of them. Historical background on suicide. You'd be amazed of what you can learn in Logos about the history of how different nations and societies have viewed suicide. Number 2, how to identify the biblical passages on suicide in the scriptures. Number 3, once you've done that, how are we going to analyze, and there's 7 suicides in the Bible, depending how you view one of them. And then we're going to look at God's view on suicide. We're going to show you how to help someone avoid suicide. Then there'll be some additional ideas to study and then some additional resources. Now, tonight's webinar is jam-packed, and with that, we're going to give you some extra tools with the purchase of the webinar. First, you're going to get my supplemental study guide, which is going to be really important. As you can see here, as I'm scrolling through the pages, there's quite a bit of information. Not everything we're going to be able to cover, but some of the links have been included if you have those resources and so forth. So you can see it is a 4-page document that we're going to go through that I think you'll find very helpful in studying. Additional to that, I've been teaching this topic in my Sunday school, and so you've got the complete presentation that I did. So we really take this topic seriously and bring it into the real world. And so here is a great PowerPoint. Again, you can modify this, but it's a great way to start. It's certainly a way to help you organize the data. And if you so choose to teach this topic, you have everything here to do so. And just to start off, to show you how, here's some information I just picked up off the web today, just to give you a perspective of how relevant suicide is today. Now, this statistic was from 2001, so it is a little bit older, but it's not, the statistics aren't going the other direction. 83 people per day in America commit suicide. That's every 17 minutes. Among the elderly, every hour and 37 minutes, an elderly person commits suicide. It's the 11th leading cause of death. Now, this is really frightening. It's the 3rd leading cause of death for basically young teenagers, young adults, 15 to 24. It's the 5th leading cause of death between 5 and 14-year-olds. So that is incomprehensible in my mind. And it is the 2nd leading cause among college students. And most significantly is there are over 750,000 attempts each year. So if you're a Christian, and most of you are that I'm reaching tonight, there is someone in your community, someone in your circle who is thinking about suicide, may have attempted suicide. This is a real relevant issue, and tonight you're going to get equipped to see the signs, to recognize it, and also how to share the hope so that they would be delivered as I was from this terrible thing. So we're excited to bring this topic, and this is our 4th Monday of the month webinar. As you can see, we highlighted there. A month from now, we're going to pick up on this track, the HDNT Bible study and sermon preparation, so be aware of that a month from now. Don't forget, we've got live training 2 other times in the month. Next Monday, though, we're going to be doing the apologetics webinar that we would have done the first Monday, but my son had a baseball game and championship, and they won, so go Longhorns. Pretty exciting. And so we had to postpone that to April 30th. And but the other ones, the first Monday of every month is May 7th. Will be the next one. We're going to wrap up our top 100 shortcuts for Logos 4. So if you've got some ideas, feel free to email me at webinars@LearnLogos.com, and we'll try to include some of maybe the shortcuts you'd like to see. How would I do this easier? And so you can feel free to email me that. The third Monday of every month will be, and this is a pretty neat one, is May 21st, doing biographical sketches with Logos 4. We're going to do a biographical sketch on Paul the Apostle. And then as I shared with you a month from now, the fourth Monday, we'll do the HDNT Part 2. So you can sign up for those at LearnLogos.com/webinar. Lastly, before we get started, if you want to take this webinar home, you can. Normally retails for $9.99, but you can get it for $4.99, a great value for an hour to 2 hours of training. We will send you an email link within the next 24 to 48 hours, and you can download the webinar immediately. If you are new, as several of you are, the webinar experience is quite different than the training CDs. We are a little more free-flowing. We're taking questions. We're showing you how to use a tool, but we don't stop at every place to show you every single step, though you will see everything visually. It's a more interactive, and it presumes a little bit of knowledge of Logos. If you are new to Logos, or if this pace is a little overwhelming, don't forget you can always pause and rewind the download. But the webinar CDs is really the great foundation to lay. The orange CD will overview every single feature in Logos 4, and combined with that update green disc, we're update to 4.5, and that's one of our guarantees when you buy our Logos training. If Logos makes a change to version 4, we will update your training for free via download. The blue CD is a pretty novel approach. What we've done is three things. We first give you 11 Bible study sermon preparation lectures. So we're going to teach you how to study the Bible and take that and prepare a lesson or a sermon. Secondly, we give you over 130 book overviews. That's books in your library as well as books outside your library that you may wish later to add. And then thirdly, we give you a series of steps. We're going to take you from the very first step of prayer all the way through of how to study the Bible using the Great Commission passage. And so this will teach you in a practical way. There's exercises to walk you through the whole Bible study process. Okay, I got a couple thoughts here. Onel says the HDNT for Old Testament will be coming soon. Yes, and I would highly recommend that. Chuck, can you send the link for your last newsletter? You can always get that by just simply entering your email, but I haven't done a newsletter for a little bit, got a little bit behind. There'll probably be one coming out in the next few weeks as I get caught up here. Sandra, do you realize that you are charging less per hour for your expertise than babysitters? Yes, I know that, and that's because I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to get trained. My whole philosophy at LearnLogos.com is to make high-quality training affordable. You've made a huge investment in the Logos. Training should not cost you the other arm and leg. And Sylvia is back, and good to have you. Okay, so let's begin first with the historical background on suicide, and let's ask a really important question, and that is, what do we know about what people have thought about suicide through the ages? Because this really does shape the thinking of people in the world, and it helps us understand why people think the way they think. And then, of course, we need to look at that through the lens of Scripture. But it's a great insight when you begin to see the different views of suicide and how even 2,000, 3,000 years ago, those views are still relevant today. And so let's go to our homepage. That's really the best place to begin when you're studying a topic. And we'll do what is, I think, a great way to start out, and that's simply to type suicide inside the homepage box right here. And after you type in suicide, hit go. Now, depending on your library and the various books and maybe some studies you've done and notes you've taken, you're going to get a section right up here called the topic section. And that's where I really want to begin tonight, in the topic section. So let me minimize or collapse the library results, and let's just focus in there. Now, depending on the resources you have, this list may be longer or it may be shorter. And there's a couple books that really go further in the background and history of suicide than other resources. One of those is the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary. This is an add-on book. It's not available standard with one of the collections, but it's a phenomenal book. Though it does have liberal leanings at times, it's still a phenomenal resource because of the depth and breadth of many of the articles. And this is a great example of that. So here's our topic on suicide. And first thing it's going to do is define it for you. The taking of one's own life is always morally problematic. Religiously motivated suicide is a particularly sensitive as an issue in the history of Jewish and Christian thought, and is closely related to issues of martyrdom and redemptive suffering generally. Now, here's what's really great. It's going to give us the introduction to the history of the problem, suicide in Greek and Roman antiquity, suicide in the Bible, Second Temple Judaism, early Christianity, and the Augustine reversal. So I'm going to scroll down to some areas. Now notice that when we typed in suicide, you'll see some words that are highlighted here, and you're probably wondering, how did that happen? Well, let me show you up here at the top. There's a little section called Visual Filters, and I'm going to click on that, and you're going to see that it says Links to Open Panels. And by having that checked, if the word suicide appears, you will see it in here as well. Pretty handy. The other reason it's showing up, and that's because we have the word suicide in our search box, and the Anchor Bible Dictionary is listed in our table of contents, and so that's the main reason why it's being highlighted. But I always like to remind myself to have links to open panels, because if I had a Bible passage opened, it would highlight it for me. So I'm going to scroll down and go to our first highlight here. The more suicide became to be regarded as a symptom, the less it was seen as an enduring moral and religious question. And this is very important in the recent trends of what we think about, the way society thinks about suicide. When it's moved away from a moral issue and is treated as a disease, then it no longer becomes thought of as a spiritual problem, and it's more thought of as a non-spiritual problem. And the problem with that is that the contemplating of suicide, at the heart of it, is a spiritual problem. And so very important that this recent trend is very scary, because as soon as you begin to diagnose wrong, you start to treat the symptoms rather than the root cause, then you begin to err and begin to use treatments that will not cure the patient, so to speak. And so very interesting insight there in the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary. Now this is very fascinating, and want to show you something here. Suicide in the Greek and Roman antiquity. Seneca, which is just one of these Greek philosophers, in particular, the act of taking one's life was extolled as the great triumph of the individual over fate. Now, right there says a lot of what the Greeks thought about suicide, that it was a good thing, that it was noteworthy, that it was extolled, because it showed that man could control his destiny. But if you think about how oxymoronic that is, because as soon as he kills himself, his destiny is over in this life, and his fate is then been sealed to go into eternity. And so very, very interesting how the Greeks, in fact, there were some suicide cults back in the Greek day, just like there is suicide cults today. Now let me go down a little bit further. Here's another one, the famous Socrates, or if you've ever watched Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure, Socrates. And that draws me back to a few years ago right there. But Socrates implies that an individual who is one of God's possessions ought not to take his own life, because that would mean usurping a privilege which belongs only to the gods. Now this is amazing. Now Socrates was a pagan. He was an idolater. But he was a wise and logical and rational man, and being made in the image of God could be thinking in a rational way, and could come to this conclusion. And this is actually a biblical thought, that for anyone to take their own life is equivalent to murder, and that is God's prerogative, the one who gives life and takes life. So very fascinating that even within the Greek society there was these challenging ideas. Now let's go a little bit farther. There's Zeno, who was a famous mathematician. I believe he was on the precursor of inventing calculus, had some interesting things there, and he was a philosopher. He ended up